Many people think that being a priest is an easy profession. Yes, it is easy if you do not give yourself to others, but it is extremely difficult if you do. It is painful for me to write this man not to become a priest. He longs for it, but it is not for him. He will do more good for people if he does not become a priest. People around him, seeing what a good person he is, push him to become a priest. Father Arseny turned away from me and said, looking at the icons, "I trust, Lord, you will help this man. I trust." He started to pray. Father Arseny never forced his spiritual children to follow his advice. He would gently make a suggestion and then wait for the person to come to his or her own decision. He had a vast memory. He remembered everything each one had told him. He remembered their addresses. If somebody did not write for a while, he would worry and himself would write. I was a witness to the fact that sometimes during the liturgy that he celebrated in his room, he would pray spontaneously for the departed servant of God, Sergei, or for the health of the servant of God, Antonina. A few days later, he would receive a letter that a Sergei Georgievich had died, or an Antonina would appear and tell us she had been very ill. What was this? Was it intuition, or was it knowledge of what had happened? We never dared ask Father Arseny about this, but this did in truth happen. When you would come to confession and start to tell about yourself, he would sometimes interrupt and finish your sentence for you, or he would answer the question you had not even asked yet, or tell you his opinion about your actions. Sometimes I would just come into his room and he would greet me saying, "I did not expect you would have an argument with your brother because of your mother. I did not expect this. You are closer to your mother than he is. You are the one who must be understanding." I would just remain standing in front of him, wishing the floor would open and swallow me up. I was so ashamed. Many of us noticed that Father Arseny was particularly attached to the people he had met in camp. I told him about it once and he answered, "You are right, I am very attached to many of them. In camp I saw people in a different light and I saw the mercy of God in them. I saw things I had never seen when I was free. Everything there is naked, acute in the extreme. People's suffering is at its limit. You yourself are condemned to die. Each person knows this, and during such a time of lengthy and painful deterioration, it is extremely difficult to summon up any faith or any desire to help others. But such people did exist. I met many of them, and they never ceased to amaze me. They were my guides in finding God under awful circumstances. They showed me a powerful faith and a love for his people. These are the people who saved me from spiritual death. They kept me from doubt and despondency and gave me the ability to stay spiritually alive in camp. And they taught me how to pray in the midst of swearing, fighting, and talking. Yes, I'm extremely grateful to my friends from camp, and I'm grateful to God and to the Mother of God for having sent them to me. Every time I see them, I remember what they gave me, what they did for me and for so many others. They did it all in the name of God and man, and I am eternally indebted to them. This is why I feel so attached to them. Returning from the past, Father Arseny's health and his strength came back to him very gradually. Even after 3 years of freedom, Father Arseny hadn't changed much, rather tall and thin, and always standing straight. He gave the impression of being healthy. His attentiveness and cordiality towards whomever he was talking with made one forget that he was a sick person and that he was tired. His eyes would only look sad, and sometimes it seemed that the grief and suffering of many were still with him. We all knew that he never forgot anyone he had met. Back in the camp of the special regime, he had paid no attention to his own illness, although he had probably suffered more than most. Here, in freedom, his illnesses became more evident. Rheumatism in his joints and sudden attacks of tachycardia sometimes forced Father Arseny to stay in bed for a while. But this did not change his way of life. Even lying in bed, he would talk with his visitors. Only the attentive eyes of the Dr. Irina could discern his illnesses. Paying no heed to his objections, she forced him to stay in bed. Many visitors came every day, and even more on holidays, so that Father Arseny wouldn't have enough time for prayer. Since he couldn't live without it, he would pray at night, thus shortening the hours reserved for his sleep. His friends loved him, but when they came to see him or wrote pages and pages to him, each of them thought that he was the only one to do so. All this resulted in an enormous load on Father Arseny, so that although we loved him, it's possible that we were unintentionally destroying him. Sometimes it was necessary for him to travel to another town to see one of his spiritual children. At the end of 1960, Father Arseny decided to go to Leningrad to find the two people whose addresses had been given to him by the dying monk Mikhail. I went with him. We arrived in Leningrad very early in the morning, and since Father Arseny didn't want to stop at some friends to rest, we went directly from the railroad station to the address he had. I begged him not to do this. He didn't even know if these people still lived at this address. When I offered to go myself to check if they did, he answered, "There would be no point. Let's go. They do live there." The door opened, and a woman about 45 years old asked, "Who are you looking for?" Father Arseny gave the last name, the first name, and the patronymic of the owner of the apartment. Wiping her hands on her apron, the woman said very kindly, "Please come in," and we entered the vestibule. "Wait a moment, please. He will be with you in a minute." She opened the door that stood ajar and said, "Sergei Sergeyevich, there is somebody here for you." Almost immediately a man came out. He was tall, with a handsome, refined face and a black beard. His big black eyes were strikingly lively and attentive. He looked at us and said, "How can I help you?" "I am here with a message," answered Father Arseny. He answered, "I am very pleased, so pleased. Do take off your coats." "So, what can I do for you?" Sergei Sergeyevich asked again and asked us to sit down. The woman who had opened the door for us was also in the room and stood next to the desk. In 1952, God gave me the opportunity to meet a man named Mikhail Terpugov. I met him in a special camp from which I was set free only in 1957. In the course of his confession, Mikhail gave me your name and address and asked me to be sure to see you. He said that it would be indispensable for you and for me. He asked me to ask you not to forget him in your prayers, and he also wanted me to tell you about his last minutes on this earth. Sergei Sergeyevich almost leapt from his chair. He tensed up. His eyes became even darker than before, and he was clearly worried. He looked at Father Arseny for a few minutes, and suddenly he rose, saying icily, "I apologize, but you have made a mistake. I am not the one you want. You want to see someone else. You probably have the wrong address." The woman who stood next to the table took a step forward and, almost moaning tearfully, said, "Sergei, let it be, Lisa. They are mistaken. They have come to the wrong address. I'm sorry. I cannot ask you to stay. There has been some mistake." He was speaking in a distraught way. We rose and hurriedly started to leave. No one spoke. I put on my coat and gave Father Arseny his. The woman had stayed in the room, but then she ran up to Father Arseny, took him by the name, and said, "Tell me who you are. What is your name?" "Pyotr Andreevich Streltsov, Yermolk Arseny." He also said my name. "We came from Ardo, especially to see you." "Wait, don't leave. Come back and sit down. Wait 20 minutes. "Sergei, don't get angry." The woman rushed out of the room and started telephoning someone. We were still standing in the vestibule, uncertain what to do. From within the room we could hear the woman's voice. "It's me, Lisa. I beg you, drop everything and come over here immediately. It is urgent. You will understand everything. You will help us." Sergei Sergeyevich looked absent-mindedly away and sat down at his desk. The woman ran into the kitchen and 5 minutes later reappeared with a teapot, cups, and some cookies. For a while we all sat silent so that the atmosphere was embarrassing and heavy. In an attempt at being casual, I started talking about the paintings on the walls. Sergei Sergeyevich made an obvious effort in naming the artists, told us about 2 or 3 of the paintings. Meanwhile, Father Arseny got up and walked over to the icon of the Mother of God. He looked at it for a long time and said, "An excellent icon, such art and such spirituality, such a combination of the human and the divine in the face of the Mother of God you only seldom encounter." Sergei also likes this icon, but he cannot determine for sure when it was painted. Do you know anything about icons? "I know a little," answered Father Arseny. "He came over to the icon once again and studied it carefully. May I take it off the wall? I would like to hold it in my hands," he asked Sergei Sergeyevich, who, looking unhappy with the request, took it off the wall himself and started showing it to Father Arseny. Father Arseny wanted to take the icon in his hands, but Sergei Sergeyevich took a step back, obviously not wanting a stranger to touch his treasure. But after a close look at Father Arseny, he handed the icon to him with tremendous care. The woman and I looked at Father Arseny in great surprise. His hands, the bent of his neck, and his whole appearance were so prayerful that it was as if he had been handed a chalice with the body and the blood of Christ. And of course, Sergei Sergeyevich also saw this. Holding the icon in his hands, Father Arseny went over to the window. He looked at it with care and attention. His look was utterly serious and prayerful, and it rested a long time on the image. He looked at the face in the daylight, and then he slowly turned it over and studied the way the board had been reinforced. He did not return the icon to Sergei Sergeyevich, but carefully laid it on the table. The light from the window fell onto the white tablecloth and onto the icon. I almost cried out, so amazingly beautiful did the face of the Mother of God appear in the sunlight. Where it had hung on the wall, you could not see this. In the arms of his mother, the son sat freely while she pressed him against herself and looked at her child with eyes filled with tenderness and love. At the same time, you could read in her eyes a deep sadness, because she knew the destiny of her son. She knew what she had to raise him for. She knew that death on the cross awaited him. It seemed that maternal love and divine knowledge came together in her with the life of her son and his future suffering. Her face was full of motherly joy and at the same time of sorrow. Father Arseny was silent while Sergei Sergeyevich looked at the icon in a state of ecstasy. He had never seen it in such a way. The tender golden thread running in the dress of the mother and of the child underlined and augmented the impression of beauty and unearthly glory. There was mercy in the soft half-smile of the mother. It said, "Come to me, all who labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Tearing my eyes away from the icon, I looked at Sergei Sergeyevich. He was stunned, looking at the icon and seeing what he had never seen before. He slowly raised his head to look at Father Arseny, and I understood then that he trusted in him and really wanted him to be the man who had known Mikhail. Father Arseny had straightened up, and looking at the icon he said, "Is it really so important to know when this icon was painted and by whom? This sort of thing is only important for art historians. Just look at the faces of the child and the Mother of God, and if you're a believer, you will understand that a man could not have painted such an icon without the help of God. Just look. When was it painted? In the beginning of the 17th century. Where? Who was its iconographer? God alone knows, the God who inspired the artist. The board is very old and has been painted over many times, one icon on top of the other. This last icon was restored, but a very long time ago. All this is totally unimportant because the Spirit of God lives in this icon. Look what peace radiates from the faces of both the mother and the son. The icon painter was full of love and faith in Christ, so that he increased his talent by faith and love. That is why the face of the mother is so spiritual and so real that it consoles all who are oppressed by sorrow and sadness, those who are deprived, naked, orphaned, imprisoned, those who have almost lost faith in human justice, those who are weak. It gives life to such people. It restores their hope. It reminds them that there exists another life, free from horror and fear, from blood and the evil of this world. The face of the mother calls us and gives us the hope of salvation. The door bell rang in the vestibule. Elisaveta Andreevna, as she was later introduced to us by Sergei Sergeyevich, ran to open the door. We could hear whispering in the hallway. Two women were talking, and one of them was taking her coat off. Sergei Sergeyevich was tense, and you could see that it would be a tragedy for him to find out that Father Arseny wasn't the man he said he was. The door opened, and Elisaveta Andreevna walked in, followed by another woman who ran to Father Arseny, saying, "Father Arseny, Father Arseny, how wonderful it is that you have come, my God. Why didn't you announce your arrival? Lisa says that Sergei Sergeyevich thought you were an agent. I had been telling Lisa about you, and thank God she thought of calling me. I have wanted to bring them both to meet you for a long time. This is remarkable. Please give me your blessing." Everything changed immediately. Father Arseny stayed at Sergei Sergeyevich's for 4 days. I found Mikhail's second friend, and he also came to meet Father Arseny. I remember, yes, I will never forget the special camp. Even now, many years later, life in camp is still vividly present in my memory. I remember every minute detail, and at night I have recurrent nightmares about it. My arrest, the numerous interrogations with tortures, the prison cell, the long trek to the camp on foot surrounded by guards armed with submachine guns and trained dogs. In a freezing autumn rain, hearing the constant shouts, "2 steps to the right and you'll be shot," without warning. All this was terrifying, but there was hope that when we got to the camp, life would be easier. Finally, we got to this long-dreaded camp, and only then did I understand that all I had lived through until then was nothing compared to what I had to live there in this camp. 8 months in this special camp proved to be an unbearable ordeal for me. It is night, and the barracks are locked. Along the rows of bunks you can see electric bulbs that barely give out any light at all. It is dusk, and sometimes through the windows blocked by snow you can see the passage of the searchlights outside. It's freezing, minus 50 degrees below Fahrenheit, and the wind is hitting the window and moaning in so many different tones. Although many people are in the barracks, you are alone, absolutely alone. You are a stranger to all, and everybody is a stranger to you. An endless night surrounds you. Sounds disappear, and a dead silence stands next to you, and a hopeless horror doesn't leave you all night. In their sleep, some prisoners scream. Others moan, still others sweat. But all this makes the silence even more tragic, so that you feel separated from life itself. Sometimes you feel that it would be possible to touch the silence around you with your hands, a silence that sticks to your thoughts and surrounds them with despair and fear. The past day was an awful memory. Death was always so near. Death accompanied by beatings, degradation, hunger, and destruction of the human soul. "You rotten nothing, I will send you to the punishment cell. I'll have you shot," screamed the guards with angry faces. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to strangle you," screamed the criminals. We all knew that these were not just threats, but real deeds. They happened all the time before our eyes. You never really rested during the night, because the night was in fact exhausting and depressing, and made you suffer even more than the day that had just gone by. You never knew when your stay in this camp would end. As soon as you seemed close to freedom, you got a few years added to your time for no reason at all. At one point I was transferred to another barracks. On the 4th day of my stay there, I noticed while going to the latrine a man who was continually standing by his bunk. What was he doing standing all night? People said he was praying. Sometimes criminals going past him made fun of him.